G'day guys, Mac with the Outer Circle, and in today's episode of Getting Started in the Horus Heresy, I just want to have a discussion about the different types of Terminators available to the Legions, and sort of talk about what ones are good, what ones work, and what ones don't. So obviously we're going to start with the Dark Angels here, and we're just going to go in normal Legion order. So the Dark Angels have basically three different types available to them. The Inner Circle Knight Cenobium, a variant unit of the Knight Cenobium, and Deathwing Companions in Terminator armor. So we'll do those first, because they're the odd one out. So the Deathwing Companions in Terminator armor, they have the benefit of having the resilience of Terminators, combined with the fact that they are not going to be suffering from the same effects that other command squads or Terminator units do when it comes to being shot by snipers. So with the Inner Circle Knight Cenobium, for example, if you gave them Thunder Hammers, which is an option, the guys with Thunder Hammers could be picked by an enemy sniper, and that specific model has to be removed. And if you use them as a bodyguard unit to a HQ, that HQ could be the one that gets removed because he could be the one taking tons of rending wounds. Deathwing Companions ignore the effects of precision fire when you shoot against them, so they make a very good bodyguard in Terminator armor. Now, the Knight Cenobium and the variant unit of the Knight Cenobium are very, very strong Terminator units, and their abilities really revolve around their Tyrannic Greatsword or variant of that sword. In one version, it's going to be a much higher strength weapon, still not enough to double out Marines on toughness, but combined with Rad Grenades it will. But the traditional Knight Cenobium have just the instant death in the form of their Tyrannic Greatswords. So, and at Strength 6 they're able to put out a lot of hurt. The downside of their weapons is they are not the lowest of AP values. So sometimes, if you go up against, say, enemy Terminators, they don't have quite the killing power to kill off the enemy Terminators. So that's why I advise taking something like a Thunder Hammer in there. Both units are quite solid. I think the traditional Inner Circle Knight Cenobium is probably a very overpowered unit, in all honesty, when you compare it to what points for points other legions will get. So, going on from there, the Emperor's Children and the Phoenix Terminators. Now, the Phoenix Terminators are a very solid unit on the charge. If they are not charging, they start to suffer. So just to be able to get things like, say, Shriekers in there, be able to lower weapon skill, they're a high weapon skill unit, their Phoenix Spears are solid weapons, but they really need the charge to really maximize their potential when you combine Legion traits with the actual war gear itself. And of course, being in Tartarus Terminator armor, which is a cool looking set of armor, but Cataphractii is really the king this edition, just down to the fact that against blast and template weapons, you're going to be re-rolling failed armor saves. Yes, you won't be able to run in them, but it's not really a big deal. And, you know, the extra armor save is really, really handy. These guys only having that 5+ invulnerable save, I kind of wish there was some way of like increasing it by +1 in close combat, for instance, because like they're so skilled with melee weapons or something. That would be really thematic. The Primarch has a rule like that where he goes to a 3+ invulnerable save, I think it is, in close combat. Really good, but unfortunately the Phoenix Terminators, they're very just mid-tier. They really rely on you getting the charge off, and if you don't pull it off, you're not going to win. Alright, Iron Warriors. So two types of Terminators here. We have the Siege Tyrants and the Dominator Cohort. Of these, this is one of the legions where they've got it really right when it came to writing the rules, because the two different Terminator units do distinctly different roles or jobs on the battlefield. The Tyrants are a very strong unit firing a lot of high-strength missiles. They can absolutely shred power armor and hamper a lot of light vehicles, and even Dreadnoughts have to be, a little bit worried around these guys. They've got a 2-up save, at least, Dreadnoughts, but still, these things have high enough strength that they will wound you consistently, and you will eventually fail armor saves. Of course, they've got Power Fists, they can get a couple of Chain Fists in there, and they can still fire their Combi Bolters. So Tyrant Siege Terminators, very solid unit. On the other hand, the Dominator cohort is the polar opposite. They trade all of their ranged firepower, basically, for the ability to hit like a freight train in close combat. Now, I suggest taking them with the multi-melter, so it gives them two in a 10-man unit, okay? Two multi-melters, you can move and fire them. Very dangerous weapon that will kill dreadnoughts, it'll mess them up. It will especially kill the big heavy vehicles you see floating around the Heresy, the super heavy units and such. Multi-melters are a dangerous weapon, and if you go up against other enemy Terminators, it's a good way to basically guarantee you're killing 1 to 2 Terminators before the charge, just to make your job a little bit easier and have a few less attacks coming back at you. Now, the Dominator cohort is supposed to be more of like an anti-mechanicum type unit because they were pissy at Perturabo for replacing them with essentially Mechanicum Automata, and so they get like hatred against Cybernetica type thing. They don't really perform better because of it. Mechanicum is so gimped in the Cybernetica region this edition that it's not an issue for them. They'll kill them anyway. The fact that they've all got Thunderhammers means that they're just really reliable at killing other Terminators. Weapon Skill 5 and Thunderhammers is just a killer combination. And yeah, it just can't be beat. So both the Iron Warriors Terminators really good and really good at their individual tasks. Then we get to the White Scars and the Ebon Kashig. Not very good at all. Last edition, the Glaive was a really strong weapon, and the Ebon Kashig, therefore, were a relatively solid Terminator unit. This edition, the Glaive is a lot weaker, and the Ebon Kashig themselves are a lot weaker. They are a lot of points for what they actually bring to the table, and they're essentially a worse version of the Phoenix Terminators in this edition. So if the Phoenix Terminators are somewhere in the middle of the rankings and really rely on their Legion traits to make them succeed, well, in the case of the Ebon Kashig, I think you really rely on Rights of War to make them better. And I just can't give them a positive rating. I can just say they're okay. They'll get the job done, but you're probably better with just stock generic Legion Terminators half the time versus paying all the extra points to take Ebon Kashig. Yes, they've got some nifty little abilities, but all these units do, but the thing is, you pay a points premium for it, and it's not always worth it. Then Varagia. So Varagia, apart from having some awful models, that fur, just, oh boy. The Varagia Terminators, they are very, very solid. High weapon skill, good variety of weapons and war gear, pretty decent on the price, and the ability to buff them quite a bit through Legion traits and Rights of War and such, but the beautiful thing about them is they don't rely on those to succeed, unlike, say, Ebon Kashig. On the Varagia, they are just very good by default with that war gear that they've got. And another probably upper mid-range unit, just because they're a very resilient unit with some pretty good war gear options. I think they're quite good this edition. Then the Imperial Fists. The Imperial Fists actually have a Huskar squad, so it's a special PDF Terminator unit, and they're all armed with Storm Shields. And of course, they haven't done us the dignity of actually painting any over here at Forge World. I mean, there is yellow Cataphracti over at Games Workshop. So just imagine these guys, but with Samurai Power Gauntlets and with these Storm Shields. So, mega resilient unit. It goes without saying, 3+ invulnerable saves are really good. Samurai Gauntlets, Strength 10 and Mastercrafted, and I think AP1, all built in. Really good unit. Really good bodyguard unit. Yeah, you can't make Legion generic Terminators to do the job that these guys can. You just can't. So, very, very strong Terminator unit. These guys, Dominator Cohort, are definitely both in the upper tiers of Terminators for this edition. I think, just to lay out some basic criteria, you need to have a really good invul save. So we're talking 3 up and 4 up, preferably. And you also need to have the ability to take something like Thunderhammers, because brutal attacks are so strong on Terminators. And if you can't take Thunderhammers, you at least need something that causes, say, instant death, or can pose a threat to enemy say dreadnoughts, walkers, that kind of thing. So like Inner Circle Knights Cenobium, they can throw so many instant death sword attacks at a dreadnought. One of them's going to get through, two of them get through, dreadnought's dead. So weapon skill 5 is the last criteria. If you're not weapon skill 5, you're just not going to win in a close combat Terminator duel this edition. It's just weapon skill is so critical, and the way it's been so poorly written, where just 1 point of weapon skill makes such a huge difference. You're moving the dice essentially by 2 positions. Instead of, weapon skill 5 versus weapon skill 4 this edition, it's like 5s to hit. Versus the last edition where weapon skill 5 versus weapon skill 4, it was 4s to hit for the weapon skill 4 player. It's so strong. And these guys have it. Speaking of guys who have and don't have, Contakar. The Contakar don't really fill any niche that I think needs filling for the Night Lords. They are fine at what they do. And then there's the Atramentar. And the problem with the Atramentar and the Contakar is they're functionally the same unit. For what they actually bring to the tabletop, you can point out little things like, the Contakar have these Volkite weapons. Yeah, but they're short-ranged, okay? And the Atramentar are only weapon skill 4 for some reason, even though Atramentar are meant to be like the Primarch's bodyguard unit. Very, very strange choice. A melee legion would have weapon skill 4 guys. You would expect that in something like a shooting legion. A legion that's not necessarily the best at close combat would be picking their... may have to make do with weapon skill 4. Unfortunately, Night Lords, the Atramentar suck. The Contakar kind of suck. They're both in the lower tier of Terminators for me. They can be made to work in both cases, yes, but honestly, buy generic Legion Terminators for Night Lords. They will do the job just fine, and really, most Night Lords armies, they're not using a lot of Terminators anyway. The Night Lords are one of the legions that gets so much benefit from using long-range firepower that it's not funny. Like, Legion Heavy Support Squads in Night Lords are fantastic, because you're probably going to be using Night Fight, and you're going to have Night Vision. So you're not going to be suffering from all those penalties, and when you combine the fact that you have Legion Heavy Support Squads full of, like, las cannons, missile launchers, whatever, and the ability to outnumber enemies for some reason means you shoot better at them. I don't get it, but that's how they wrote the rules. It really plays into it for Night Lords. So their Terminators are just both a bust, definitely the lower end of the spectrum. Then the Blood Angels, Crimson Paladins. So the Blood Angels are a melee legion, and they have a few melee units. The problem is that the Crimson Paladins are subpar compared to other options, like the Dawnbreaker cohort, for example, which is a power-armoured elite unit, like a Sanguinary Guard type unit. They have more hitting power than these guys. Crimson Paladins are poor man's Huskarls. They have these shields, but the shields don't increase their save, it just lowers the incoming strength of enemy weapons, which I don't believe lowers instant death threshold, it just changes the strength of the weapon when it comes to the purposes of calculating wounds. That is not enough resilience, and in a world full of strength 8 and even up to strength 10, like Huskarls, as well as weapons that are either brutal or instant death, and you're attacking back with swords and spears and fishing for rending wounds, no. Just no. They sucked last edition, they suck this edition, and someone's got to learn how to do a better job writing their rules, because they just don't work. Then we've got the Iron Hands, so the Gorgon Terminators. And I think the Gorgons are a very, very good unit. They combine sort of aspects of both the regular Terminators in Tartarus and in Cataphractii together to create a sort of half and half blend. But what makes these guys good is they're super tanky, and they can take graviton guns, which is sort of the bane of vehicles and dreadnoughts. So the ability to have graviton guns on a unit that can just walk around the battlefield, decently priced, well armed, it's a good thing. Now, unfortunately, only the Gorgon Hammer Bearer, that's the sergeant of the squad, is going to have a Thunder Hammer. Everyone else is going to be stuck with, Power Fist, Chain Fist, regular power weapons like power axes. And you're only going to get 2 grav guns in the squad. Should be 4 personally, I think. And your weapon skill 4. So what are Gorgons good at? Well, in previous edition, I used Gorgons for securing and holding bits of the battlefield, especially objectives, because shifting Gorgons off objectives is really, really difficult. I really rate them for that, their resilience and such. Gorgons are a strong Terminator squad. You're looking at all those normal Terminator stats, built-in feel no pain, yes, but also you're going to be relentless, you're going to be stubborn. You know, they have great sticking power, basically. Can you do the job of Gorgons with regular Terminators? I'd argue you probably cannot. Because the armor is the difference here. Because that armor, the Gorgon Terminator armor, when it is up close to the enemy, okay, it's got this special rule which whenever someone fires at a Gorgon Terminator and you pass an armor save or an invulnerable save, you roll a d6. And if you roll a 4+, then the enemy units with at least one model within 6 inches of your Gorgons, they have to test as if they've been hit with a blind weapon. That means taking an initiative check. And if they fail, they drop their weapon skill to 1. So that will make up for your weapon skill of 4. In theory. But you still have to pull it off. So keep that in the back of your mind. Then we get to the Ultramarines. And as you can see here, I have Tyrant Siege Terminators. Why is that? Well, because the Ultramarines have essentially ripped off the unit for something called Fulmentari Terminators. And the Fulmentari have a plasma missile weapon. And they are broken as a piece of glass dropped from the top of the Burj Khalifa. So, unlike Tyrants who are firing crack missiles, the Ultramarines have these slightly shorter range, insane plasma missiles, and they've got multiple firing modes to them as well. They are not the cheapest unit in the world, but they can absolutely obliterate any unit within 24 inches of them. I mean, any unit. Really, really strong. And you can take more than one squad of them. So, Fulmentari Terminators, they're an upper tier unit. Are they the very top of the pile? No, because I think the ability to do really well in close combat and price are still both factors. But the Fulmentari do have 4+ invulnerable saves. They have that resilience. So it's up to you on the day what you really rate at the top end. But I still think that out of the Terminators we've gone through so far, the top tier is definitely Dominator Cohort and Huskarls. They're right at the top end. Crimson Paladins, Kontakar, they're right down the bottom end. Everything else is somewhere in the middle. I think Inner Circle Knights Cenobium are also at that upper end as well. World Eaters and the Red Butchers. So the Red Butchers are the bottom of the bottom in Terminators for me. They're a terrible unit no matter how you cut it. Because the Red Butchers' big advantage is they're supposed to be these ravening, like, crazed berserker madmen. They're proto-corn berserkers. And they basically trade in their ability to resist incoming attacks with high weapon skill by just throwing themselves bodily at the enemy. And what this really translates to on the tabletop is you always hit them on 3s. That means their weapon skill for these guys is a non-factor. And that means that's a real problem, because you can go up against weapon skill 4 Terminators, like, say, generic Legion Terminators. You're attacking them with power axes. Granted, you have a lot of attacks, but Terminators are 2 wounds now, so they're twice as resilient as last edition, and they're going to get Feel No Pain, which surely you're putting on your Terminators, against power axes. The only guy who's fighting with Chain Fists is the Squad Sergeant. So you might be able to take, say, Twin Lightning Claws on your models, sure, but how many points do you want to sink to this squad for AP3 weapons or AP2 situationally weapons that the enemy is going to get invul saves and they're going to get Feel No Pain against? When the enemy is going to hit back at you, they're going to hit you on 3s no matter what. They're going to wound you on 2s with any decent weapon like Power Fists or Thunderhammers. And then 50% of the time, you're going to fail an armor save and just instantly lose a Red Butcher. The Math Hammer is very reliable on this. Tim, good friend over at the Eye of Horus, he thinks they're a really fantastic unit because they have Fearless, and Fearless is not very common this edition, yada yada yada. I would counteract the fact that they're fearless with the fact that they're going to die within 2 turns in a 10 versus 10 Terminator fight against stock Legion Terminators, only upgraded to have Power Fists. They are going to lose. That means the only job they're good at is killing power armor. And if you're going to kill power armor, you don't need to spend the points of Red Butchers when you can get faster rampages with jump packs. Red Butchers aren't even a threat in such a way that you have to devote firepower to killing them. No, these are the kind of guys that there are plenty of ways to deal with, basically. Their armor is no way of saving them, and because they're in Cataphracti, they are very slow units, so just avoid them, don't touch them. Alright, Death Guard. So Death Guard, we've got 2 types of Terminators available, the Death Shroud and the Grave Wardens. So we'll start with the Death Shroud, and the Death Shroud are fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Terrible at killing other Terminators. And the reason they're terrible at killing other Terminators is the Scythe just doesn't do the damage. But my personal belief with Death Guard Death Shroud is to use them in 2 or 3 man squads, and they become just these intractable little units that you can move around the battlefield. The enemy has to do something about them, but what that something is, they don't know, because these guys are resilient. Okay, they are very hard to kill. 3 wounds each. And yeah, okay, they don't have the invulnerable save of the other legions, but 3 wounds each. That means that just 2 of these guys is 6 wounds. That's an awful lot of wounds that have to be cut through before the enemy can actually have an effect on you. So that is quite a solid little ability, I think. On top of that as well, Battle Hardened 1. So Strength 8 weapons, they're not affecting you anymore, or at least they're not going to instant kill you. They may still get through, and you'll still have to make an armor save against them, but the Battle Hardened reducing the incoming strength, essentially, of the weapon, means these guys, you have to take all 6 wounds off them the old-fashioned way. So, yeah, really good. They're Chosen Warriors as well, so they can issue and accept challenges. It's not going to come up too often for you, but it's nice to have it. Stubborn as well, and Leadership 9. Just a reliable brick wall of a unit. I really like them. Death Guard Grave Warden Terminators. So these guys are kind of like Gorgons in that they're a resilient Terminator unit designed for ranged combat. Now, they can take a heavy flamer, and it'll be an Alchem heavy flamer at that, because Death Guard. They've got a lot of attacks, a lot of shots with their grenade launchers, especially if they're firing toxin rounds. They are a good unit for a single heavy support choice in your army and no more. I think if you're playing Destroyer-themed Force, then by all means, grab a ton of the guys. But in regular games, they're just a fantastic harassment unit for power armor. And even Dreadnoughts, with the amount of toxin rounds these guys can put out, they can cause enough wounds on a Dreadnought that just the sheer amount of wounds you're causing to them means they're gonna fail saves. And then you can back that up, of course, with the fact these guys have Power Fists. You know, they are shrouded as well, which is nice to have an inbuilt damage mitigation. They are also stubborn, so they're going to linger around on the battlefield. And when they get in close, they have the Death Cloud projectors as well, which is those little smokestacks on their armor. They got a flamer type weapon built in on every one of them as well. Strength 1, AP 4, Assault 1, Poison 3. Very, very handy little weapon. So you can throw a lot of this stuff at the enemy at one time. So, low strength weapons, yes. Not very damaging weapons, no. But they have so many attacks with them that they can overwhelm someone through weight of fire. And that's what they're good at. These guys are a fantastic unit for really messing with enemy objective-taking units. And they have a lot of resilience that allows them to just linger on the battlefield. Then we get to the Thousand Suns. The Thousand Suns are trashed here as a legion at the best of times, but the segment are pretty solid for the Thousand Suns. They're probably their best unit. What sets the segment apart is the fact that they are a psychic unit, okay, and psychic powers used wisely this edition are incredibly powerful. I almost think that it's worth me making a video just on how to fix them, because this Legion's in all sorts of strife, trust me, rules-wise. But the segment, they have enough attacks with their weapons that they can cause a lot of punishment. Now, their AKM pattern force weapons are not the instant death kind of force weapons. That's gone from last edition. They're +2 strength force weapons, but it's basically a no penalty to turn it on thing. So you're essentially striking with strength 6 force weapons at all times. It's neat. It's not the important part. What is important is any model can take a Thunderhammer. They are weapon skill 5. You will be paying the points for it though. 15 points a model is probably too steep for a Thunderhammer. But when you combine it with the fact that they have a psychic discipline, they become incredibly dangerous. If you pick the right discipline, these guys can be absolutely downright terrifying on the battlefield. And they are really the only decent Thousand Suns unit available to the Legion. Sons of Horus and Justirian. So pretty much everything that I said about Death Shroud, very much similar for these guys. Resilient, tough Terminator unit. They essentially are doing the job of regular Legion Terminators, but dialed up to 11. Bit more resilient, bit better on the assault, bit higher weapon skill, all those little things. I think they're a very good unit. Most players who use Sons of Horus will opt for these guys over generic Legion Terminators because they are a net improvement. They have little quirks that do make them very handy. Like Furious Charge of 1 is good, so you're going to get those Strength 9 attacks. Thunderhammers, you can take them all over the squad, 15 points each. Steep, yes, but not insanely steep. They got the Bane Strike Column Voltus. They can kill infantry at range, just not going to come up too often. But Stubborn, Leadership 9, and you can take them as a retinue unit as well. They're pretty good. They're pretty good. Are they worth the points over a generic Legion Terminator? For an extra attack, better leadership, better weapon skill, and ballistic skill, yeah, I'd say they are. I'd say they're probably worth the 15 points. Because even one extra attack on a Terminator, like when you pair that with a Thunderhammer, that's now essentially 2 extra attacks. And it's on every Terminator in the squad. That's probably worth the 15 points there alone. So, yeah, I highly rate them. Then the Wordbearers have nothing, so we skip to these lovely yellow Raven Guard here. So, the Raven Guard, they have their own elite sort of Terminator squad called the Deliverers. Now, these were basically outcasts from the Legion. Corax didn't like their tactics because they were based on Terran units who fought most of the Great Crusade with the Sons of Horus, so essentially they are pseudo-Justirian, and the stats show it. So whatever Justirian do, these guys essentially do for the Raven Guard, and that is the Deliverer Terminators. Solid unit, very, very good unit. They are, if they had a better save, they would really be up there with the Huskals and the Dominator cohort. They are really up there. They are so good. Hatred, high weapon skill, the ability to teleport in, all very, very handy stuff. So to take a step back now, we're going to go to the Fire Drakes. Now, I've shown the Raven Guard's Deliverers off, which I think are, again, a very fantastic Terminator unit, especially for the Raven Guard, who need something like that. I did them straight after the Sons of Horus because they're essentially Justirian. Then we get to the Salamanders. So the Salamanders, Fire Drakes. Fantastic unit, yes, but you pay through the teeth for it. You are getting Huskals here, but you're paying more for the privilege, basically. You don't have the benefits of, like, Imperial Fist's Legion traits. You're lumped with Salamander's Legion traits, which are not the best, let's be honest. But you have a reliable unit, hard to kill, very resilient. Terminators with Storm Shields, come on, you're not hurting them. But huge point sink. Like 10 of these guys kitted out is like 700-something points. It's ridiculous what it costs. But Mastercrafted, Thunderhammers, they can really shrug off wounds. Like the resilience is not to be understated. They are up there with the Death Guard when it comes to resilience. The problem is it's going to be really hard for you to earn back the points. If you take 10 of these guys, you'll have an unkillable brick that you can move around the battlefield, and people will just go, how do I deal with that? Very true. I mean, Dreadnoughts even can't go near these guys. These guys will grab a Dreadnought and they'll just be kicking the crap out of them. Like that scene in The Boys where like Stormfront's getting attacked by like the other 3 female superheroes and they're just stomping her on the ground. Yeah, that's what these guys will do to Dreadnoughts. They're very good at that. But they're not the only Legion that's very good at that. Thunderhammers, though, is the S tier weapon, really. So, very, very strong unit. And to round us out, Alpha Legion, Linnean Terminators. They're good. The fact that they are scoring is a beautiful thing. But otherwise, they're a very underwhelming Elite Terminator unit. They don't have the close combat ability of other Elite Legion Terminators. Although they're not bad. They are not bad at it. Let's be honest here. You know, they are still Legion Elite Terminators. But weapon skill 4. It will not die 5+. It happens, it does come up, but Fire Drakes have that. Fire Drakes have it will not die 5+. And Fire Drakes are already a lot more resilient than these guys because, you know, they have Storm Shields. Okay? Power Axes as stock. The special weapons you can give these guys are also really weird. Like, you can take... you take a conversion beamer, heavy conversion beamer, and it's like, do you want to pay 250 points stock for the unit, plus another 15 for the conversion beamer, so 265 points, to have them sit at the back of the map firing that conversion beamer over a really long range to get the most out of it? No. So you're going to turn them into a close range unit. Well, conversion beamer is not the worst weapon up close, but it's definitely not as good as just taking Volkites up close. Because the amount of extra shots Volkite weapons have now, combined with the fact that against blasts and templates up close, so many units have the heavy special rule and they're just going to absorb the firepower from it. So, getting this squad up close and just absolutely pummeling someone with Volkite charges, and maybe even taking a pair of Volkite culverins, because they can take them, as well as, you know, taking a couple of chain fists in the squad, I'd say probably 2. The thing that lets this unit down is the cost is prohibitive for upgrading. You give these guys a Power Fist, they are 5 points less than a Justirian with a Thunderhammer. And the Justirian's got an extra attack, they're going to have Chosen Warriors, they're going to be Weapon Skill and Ballistic Skill 5. I would be way more scared of the Justirian. I think the Alpha Legion really suffers from the fact that regular Legion Terminators and these guys essentially perform the same task. The only thing these guys have is they are scoring. That's it. I'd say they're probably middle tier. They would be bottom tier in a non-scoring mission. Okay, if there's not objectives to be played on the table, they are a bottom tier unit. When it comes to Terminators, they're not a bad unit by any stretch of the imagination, but you cannot in any world call them a good unit. Underwhelming. Anyway, that's it. That is the current Legion Terminators variants in the Horus Heresy. For those who are curious, out of Tartarus and Cataphracti, who wins this edition, the answer is the Cataphracti. Because with the dramatic change in fortune, in fact, I should probably go into this now before I finish out the video. So, what made Tartarus good last edition was you can run down enemy units when you come in by deep strike, things like that. You can run afterwards. You can spread yourself out to protect you from pie plates and things like that. That was really handy in 1.0. In 2.0, the pie plates are almost non-existent. And where they are around now, they're a lot weaker, and Terminators, especially Cataphracti, are a lot more resilient against them, getting to reroll failed armor saves. So straight away, Cataphracti has taken 3 points of advantage over Tartarus there. Also, Cataphracti Terminator armor has that built-in 4+ invulnerable save. Now, when both your Terminators were 1-wound Terminators in 1.0, if failing an armor save was like, oh yeah, whatever, But now you get to maximize the potential of your unit by keeping them around for longer because they have more wounds. So the better chance you have of keeping them alive, that is to say, take better armor, better invulnerable save, or the heavy special rule, of course, getting those rerolls against templates, that means that your survivability goes up dramatically, okay? Whereas Tartarus doesn't have that ability. It's like if you're going to be 2 wounds, that's twice as many saves you're going to have to make before you lose your unit as in 1.0. If you're going to be making twice as many saves, wouldn't you want to be doing it with the better dice roll? I know I would. Plus, most of the Cataphractic Terminators also look better than a lot of the Tartarus Terminators. I mean, Contakar aren't exactly going to win any design awards, are they? But anyway, that's it. That's it for me. I'm Mac with the Outer Circle. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you got something out of this discussion video. And please, if you disagree with me about anything, hit me up in the comments below. Unless it's something to do with the Night Lord's Atramentar and thinking that Weapon Skill 4 Atramentar is a good idea, in which case this may not be the hobby for you, and you also need to seek professional medical help. I can't help you with the delusions. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all on the next episode.